Well, there's no empty chair over here, which is a good thing. That means that we are house full. And I'm hoping that people will just sit on the steps and to make more room. Well, essentially, this is what we're talking about. Art, violence, and the state in the killing fields of Karachi. And now I'm going to do that sacrilegious thing and put it down on the ground. You could, if you wish, do that, Adeela. Welcome, everybody. It's a great pleasure to have such luminaries on this podium. And really, none of them need an introduction. But I'll just to start with myself. My name is Naazish Ataullah, and I'm an artist and an art educator. And, but what's important in the context, and I also am a council member for many years on the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan, and I do many things, but one of the important things about me is that I actually came to Lahore about 52 years ago from Karachi. So I'm a person who was brought up in Karachi. And I remember a Karachi in which, as I was telling Omar, Shahid, Hamid this morning, that we could go at 2 o'clock in the morning as teenagers and sit on the seafront, and we could move around anywhere without fear. And over the decades, I have seen a deterioration taking place which is of enormous proportions, and it really pains me at every level. Anyway, with that short introduction, I want to move on to Adeela Suleman, the celebrated international artist, one of our very favorite people, who is an artist but also an important art educator. She has taught at the 2 ends of the city, Karachi University, where I also happen to have studied all those decades and decades ago, and at the Indus Valley School of Art, where she is on a kind of long leave. And I mean, she's exhibited all over the world. She's highly celebrated. She's doing very, very interesting work. But we're going to talk about her more current work, which is actually over the past 15 years. So it's not that current. It's not as if it just happened a few months ago, but it's a long process. We then move on to Omar Shahid Hamid. Omar Shahid Hamid is a creative writer. He's an author. He's an author of 5 very important books because they are fiction, and that they are deeply steeped in his own personal history and in the history of the city that he actually has lived in, and the city is Karachi. And we then move on to Faisal Siddiqi, another really exceptional person, part of the human rights movement in Pakistan, a person who's not just a really highly acclaimed lawyer, but actually a human rights lawyer, someone who has done several public interest litigations of different kinds, and particularly in the scope of human rights, and has written a lot. And in fact, on Thursdays, he writes for Dawn. He writes a column in Dawn. And I always wonder, should I read Faisal first, or should I read F.S. Ijazuddin, who's on the other page? So, because we don't have a lot of time, and we have this very unusual kind of a panel, I think that what knits them together is their experience of being Karachi walas. And as this morning, Omar said to me, oh, well, what are you doing? You seem to be that grenade who's been thrown in our midst. So that's who I am. I'm the grenade. And they are, I'm happy to say, the wonderful, wonderful people with whom we're going to share the next 50 minutes or so. I would like to leave some time for questions and answers because I'm sure many of you would like to ask them questions. But we would like to start with Adeela first of all and to ask her about the experience of actually living and working in Karachi. And I mean, we go on a very long session of where she started and what happened and so on. But I think that we should leave it to her to talk about how she has constructed this particular show of 15-20 works, and also because they relate, and the works that relate to this particular compendium with the most remarkable people who have actually written in this book. Because there are journalists, there are all kinds of other people, social activists, there are other people, including Adeela, including a very interesting essay by Faisal Siddiqi, and all of them relate to this history of the past only 15 years, but actually it goes back further. So, to you, Adeela.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Naji, for the generous introduction, and Faisal and Omar to be on the same stage. I was telling Faisal this morning that both Omar and you can save me and can get me killed also. So I have to be super careful what I'm saying. I wanted to thank LLF and Razi for organizing this session. So I'm honored to be here and part of the LLF programming. The book that we are talking about is Art, Violence, and the State. It's a 1.5-year long work that we did. I think this book would not have come out if that incident didn't happen and my work was not destroyed by the agencies. The book, I want to thank 2-3 people, and it's dedicated to my father. It's dedicated to Naqibullah's father, Muhammad Khan, and to my dear friend, Hamid Haroon, who was, he really helped me in terms of structuring the book, and I'm really, really grateful for his help and support. I have to probably turn myself in order to see. Okay. So I just wanted to build a relationship with me and my city, the Karachi. I'm a complete Karachiite. I was born there, raised there, studied there, married there, living there, working there. So I have never studied abroad, never lived abroad. For a very brief period of time, I lived abroad for 4 or 5 months. But apart from that, I'm a complete Karachiite. And I was living on the north of Karachi. I was raised in the north side of Karachi, which is Urdu speaking, which is middle class, and Pul ke us par. It's on the other side of the bridge. And my upbringing was in a very, very middle class household where we saw. But our house was at a very interesting location in Nazmabad number 1, and it was right next to the Premier College. And I'm just trying to build a relation to why am I interested in violence and why this city really fascinates me. And there used to be brawls and in between the political parties, and the boys used to run on the streets and the police were after them. And our house had a huge veranda, and my mother used to throw wet towels to them because they used to throw tear gas. So unki aankhein chalti thi, so my mother used to throw wet towels. And then my father was a doctor, and we had a staircase, so they used to run and hide on our staircase, and my mother used to provide them first aid. So that was my first encounter with violence out there in front of me on the streets of Karachi, right next to our house. So that was one thing. Then of course I'm a generation of Zia. I was growing up at a time when Zia-ul-Haq was there. You would see public lashing, you will see how freedom of speech was taken away. So that also left a mark on us, how the curriculum was changed, how Arabic was introduced, and how our whole narrative shifted towards the Middle East or the Kaaba rather than what we were and what our history is. So that's the kind. And then Karachi University happened and I studied there. And to tell you frankly, that is where I actually understood what a youth of Karachi goes through in a city like Karachi. And that really opened up my eyes, because I saw my friends who were part of the student wings of political parties. I saw the brawls. I saw rangers taking them away. I saw how brutally, there was a backlash on them. So that struggle, that resistance, that response to the city was there. I saw with my upbringing. I saw in the university, and that's what I think has brought that resistance, or the kind of activism that people label me with that. I think that's where it is coming from. The blood fountain that you see at the back, Dance in Your Own Blood. It's made out of red LED lights which are found. I'm interested in found objects, found images, found imagery, found stories, and I look at what is happening, and I listen to people, and I create my own visual out of that. So I created this blood fountain. Then in Karachi, every time that you open Tribune page, there used to be a map where they used to put red dots on the map of Karachi where the deaths have occurred. And every day there used to be like 16, 17, 27, 23 deaths, and we were immune to the number, because 2-3 people doesn't matter to us. It has to be a larger number to take our attention. So I started calculating the numbers, and I said, okay, fine, I'm going to dedicate one dead bird to each death, and I'm going to create these monuments of death. And I said that, I told myself that every day if 17 people have died, I'm going to produce 17 birds, and if 18 people have died, or 23, whatever the number is. But the death rate was much faster than my studio production. And I was horrified by that, simply because that I can't even compete with number. So I started making these monumental works in terms of where we have seen in the world, all over the world, here also, wherever the deaths have occurred, they create the highest number of deaths, the biggest monument that you see over there. So that's the connection, I had with the city. And then, of course, Naqibullah's murder, and the face of his father on the television all the time. That story shook the, Karachiites at least, because he was a boy, 27-year-old boy coming from North Waziristan, trying to open up that's the story that we have. And all I did was that I worked with his father, and I made him sit in front of the Arabian Sea, and I filmed him. I wanted him to see in the camera, in the eyes of the viewer, in the eyes of the perpetrator, in the eyes of the people who do not do anything about it. And I wanted him to stare directly, that's all. And the story that was narrated, not narrated, but it was coming as a text in the film, was the story that was told to us from 2018 when Naqib died, 13 January onwards, till October 2029 when this work was published. That story was narrated on the television, in the print media, again and again. So it was nothing new. I was so cautious of the fact that I even took the story from the Dawn Key investigative report, and I created my own abridged version of the story with deleting all the details. And in the first, and there were these 444 pillars that was made, because the police investigation told us that this superintendent has been charged with 444 extrajudicial killings, and the case was between the state and that police officer. So it wasn't like that his father was doing the case, the state was actually doing the investigation, and those are the numbers that came to us. It was not something that I constituted or. So I created this field of 444 pillars. This is the location where Naqib was taken. It's an abandoned farmhouse in the outskirts of Karachi. I went there, and ironically, the policemen took me there. The first 2 times I tried, they took me to the wrong location. The 3rd time when I pursued, they took me to the right location. One could see the bullet marks there, one could see the rooms that he was there. So this is the work I created. There was the inside room, there were these 52 pillars, and the film was, projected. And these are the 392 pillars that were in the outside grounds of Frere Hall, and 52 pillars were inside. I was working on the site for 22 days, because it's not a small work. It wasn't put up in one day. I was working there, installing the work. A lot of general public was interacting with the work. When I was putting up the video, trying to see just the size of it, people used to come and sit inside and watch the video. And in the first 2 hours of the general public opening, the work was shut down. 2 men came and they said, I said, I will not do it. If you want to do it, you do whatever that you want to do and I'll do what I want to do. And they shut down the work and they said, okay, you should remove the pillars, otherwise they will be broken down. And that's exactly what they did. This was a plaque that was written with the pillars outside, and the plaque said that if we don't do anything about it, we will be lying beside them. So this is what happened. They did it 3 times. They came once, they came twice, they came thrice. And in the 3rd time, they brought trucks with them, they brought hammers with them. They broke down each and every pillar and they took it away. There was a huge protest by the civil society. Die in Lions, slogans, for 3 days this was happening, and then the site was closed down. They put the guards all around it, so we couldn't approach the site after 3 days.
Adeela, can you stop for just 1 second? I would suggest that some people go and sit on these steps because there aren't enough chairs over here. You might have to watch a little obliquely, but if you like, you can sit on the steps. Sorry, please carry on.
So they came and they took it away in the trucks. I don't know where they dumped it, but they eventually did. I was teaching at that point. My friend actually phoned me and he said that they are taking away. And these photographs that you see were given to me by schoolboys who were bunking the school on that day. And they happened to be there, and everyone has an Android. So my computer guy who was putting up the projector, he was there. So he exchanged the photographs with them. And because they were not letting him come and take the photographs. So the boys were just sitting there. So they actually documented it for me. And in 2019, in December, Naqib's father passed away. He was, fighting for justice till his last breath. And you know what has happened after that. Should I continue, or you want to talk about the new work also?
Yeah, okay, let's wait.
Okay.
Okay, so now, first of all, Adeela actually conceiving of making this work. That is one aspect which is really important, which is what a creative artist does. And it's not really a response, it's in a process that because she has been working in the city with craftsmen, she has been working with all kinds of a variety of people. And so her work, that we people who are familiar with her work know that of her connection to the city and to the workmen of the city. So there is this process that she went through, but what actually happens immediately after this incident occurs is also extremely important because it opens up other questions. It opens up all those aspects of violence, state violence. It opens up the question of censorship. It opens up the question of people being unwilling to stand up for their fellow men, and so on. So there are lots of moral, ethical questions that come up as well. And that is what is very, very disturbing. So before we get back to Adeela's work, which we'll refer to her more recent work a little later, I want to bring in Omar at this point. Omar being the other creative writer who has written about violence and crime. And apart from his own personal kind of experience, which is something that began this process for him, he is someone who studied in Karachi, as he said, he's lived in Karachi, and he is currently DIG in the police force. So he is an official of the Pakistan police force. And I would like him to comment on how he balances his creative career with the other career of being this police officer.
Thank you, Naazish. It's interesting because obviously we have 3-4 creative people on this panel, and as you said, we're also all Karachiites, and fundamentally the history of violence of Karachi over the last 40 odd years, which has been our lifespans, is our personal history in one way or another. You know, Adeela mentioned experiences, and if you kind of ever go and meet another Karachiite anywhere in the world, one of the first things that you will sort of bond over will be shared experiences of the troubles in Karachi. Lahoris will bond over other things. They'll hardly ever bond over a history of violence or things like that. But Karachiites, whether you go to Toronto or London or Johannesburg or wherever in the world, will bond over, हाँ जब हम वहाँ थे तो कर्फ्यू लगता था, या हमारे फलाने बंदे को उठाया गया, या someone we knew was killed in Karachi's violence. And so it's marked all of us in different ways. Obviously, my writing is based on a lot of that history of the violence. But I think the other thing that I find strange as a Karachiite is, and this also speaks to what happened with Adeela's installation. Thank you. You can tell I've never been to art school. Installation is, it's funny that we haven't really, if you really think back on it as creative people, and now it's a long period of time, right? It's about 40, almost 50 years. We've not really documented that. I remember many years ago when I started writing, someone was talking to me about writing about Karachi, and at that time, the stuff that had been written about Karachi in novels and in literature had been sort of memories of the 60s or 70s when it was a nicer time. And I remember saying to someone that, well, I don't understand how you can sort of write a book about Karachi without mentioning its violence, because in our generation that's the overwhelming factor that marks us all, right? Or how you can sort of do artwork about Karachi without referring to it in one form or another. And yet it's surprising that there's very few people who do that. I mean, Adeela is one of the few people who have done that. Faisal in his work has done it. I've done it to an extent in my books. But to a wider extent, we don't. It's almost as if there's a sort of silence. It's a weird silence about it, which is interesting. It's do we want to forget about it? Do we not want to? And yet we can't forget about it. So it's a strange contradiction that we have as Karachiites and as creative Karachiites.
Okay, so how do you balance your career as a police official with
I get the best stories from my career.
Okay.
Mohammed Hanif once said to me that, तुम्हारे ऊपर ban लगना चाहिए because you have an unfair advantage. So, I'm going to sue you for unfair trade practices because you go away and sort of get involved in something and write a book about it.
Well said. Okay, so we'll move on to Faisal. Faisal has written a very, very interesting article on justice and injustice, that he refers to justice and injustice as conjoined twins. So this whole idea of evil, good and evil, and the kind of work that Faisal does himself, and I would like him to talk about the justice system, and particularly in the context of what happened with Adeela and what is happening on a regular basis in Karachi.
The justice system. I can only say what Ghalib would say, जब तवक्को ही उड़ गई वाले कौन किसी का गिला करेगा। हमको उनसे है वफा की उम्मीद जो नहीं जानते। Just continuing on and indirectly answering the question. Continuing on this monster called Karachi. I mean, it is a monster. It doesn't let you live there. It doesn't let you leave it. It's a monster. I mean, I can't think of any reason, rational reason, to live in this jungle. And it's a violent jungle. It's a chaotic jungle. I mean, the only two reasons one can think of as far as I am concerned to live in this jungle. I mean, if I had a choice, I would move to Lahore in a heartbeat. It's the only livable city in Pakistan. Really. But sadly, Karachi has two prisons which it has created for me. The first is that my mother is buried and I can't leave her. It's such a bad city that I can see tomorrow that someone will go and capture that land, dig up a grave and build a building. This is unbearable for me. I mean, it's an irrational, emotional reason to be attached to that city. The second is that this irrational sense of public duty which Ghalib Amir, of whom I am a foremost ashik, have imposed on me. So what Ghalib has told me to do is that consequences are irrelevant. So it doesn't matter what happens in these cases. It doesn't matter if you lose most of your human rights cases. It's irrelevant. A consequential life is irrelevant. ये न थी हमारी किस्मत के विसाले याद होता अगर और जीते रहते यही इंतजार. So the only thing which should matter to people is what they believe in, what they are passionate about. All लोग नाइंसाफी करते हैं जी, they have to answer for that. We should not do that. So a roundabout answer.
A little more about the good and evil, Omar.
Then I say about it.
Yeah, I think. Thank you, Adeela. Karachi is a city that is shaded in good and evil, and I think it's a city, and perhaps if you haven't lived Karachi as we have, perhaps people from other cities won't understand this, but the presence of good and evil in very stark forms is there in every day and in every aspect of Karachi. You know, perhaps not, it may not be that way in Lahore or Islamabad, certainly not in Islamabad, and I think that's part of the love affair that we have with Karachi as well, that it kills you, and yet you can't stop falling in love with it, you can't fall out of love with it, because you see the good in people, you see the good in everyday people, you see the bad or the evil in people as well. But you constantly keep hoping that the people on the good side are sort of, when the accounting is done, slightly more than the evil side. So yeah, it messes you up. It's a good city for therapists.
Okay, so where do we go from here? I think I would like to ask Adeela back to her and to look at some of the work that she has been making after this particular body of really important work that, of course, we all responded to in a visceral manner, and that is the kind of response that she evokes, her work evokes. And there was an outrage in the artist community particularly, And I remember I fractured my shoulder, and I just had to send her a message immediately because I couldn't go to that Karachi Biennale. And I said that, you know, it's outrageous what is going on. And I'm standing with you in support from my bed. And then, obviously, there was that kind of response from her students and from all kinds of other civil society, members of civil society and activists and across the city. The thing is that Karachi is also, in my view, an extremely resilient city. It has all the problems that large urban metropolises have. And yet it has that inherent quality of damage, danger, and then the ability to somehow collect and to gather together, to pull themselves out of it. So on one part of the city, you may have the city shutting down, and in about 4 hours' time, everybody is back to work again. Because somehow, this is a way of life. And I think I would like to move on to what Adeela has been doing more recently.
You mentioned earlier, Naji, that my relationship with the craft people and the studio that I have. The studio has, my team is right now currently 28 people working with me. From 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. we work. That's my schedule. Thank God that I'm not doing a full-time job these days, so I can spend time in my studio. And as I said earlier, that I'm from a Urdu-speaking family living in the north of Karachi. So there is this, in the upbringing of the girls, there's this always कि हमें अमूर ख़ानदारी की चीज़ें सीखना हमारे ऊपर compulsory होता है कि we go through this. It's like a finishing school inside the house, and also whatever my mother or grandmother can find places that I can go and learn. And I think my interest in the craft developed from that, to make things with hands. And so my search and going to Karachi University, that really opened up the world to me. And instead of looking at being an incestuous, and talking about yourself, I started looking what was happening outside. So I started commenting on what was happening on the roads of Karachi and what was available on the roads of Karachi. I was interested, as I said earlier, that I was interested in stories. So the craft that is available, the urban craft that is available, I bring it into my studio. And I make it my own, and I elevate its production, the making of it, to the highest level that I can at that moment. I feel that it's not an urban craft anymore. You will see Vespa painters working in my studio. You will see embroidery people who जो अड्डे पे काम करते हैं. You will see जो Vespa के wheel covers, the repousse work that happens on Vespa, and that is diminishing from the city. Very fast, very rapid. Even the truck art sticker that we, painstakingly make, I've been told that now these Chinese sticker sheets are coming, which people are now sticking instead of having a very low relief of paper on top of paper on top of each other and creating that relief. Yes, yes. So this is 17 feet high applique work. The imagery is coming out from the Mughal miniature. I'm interested in that because that's the only pictorial history that we have in this region. I was interested in violence. I was looking at the violent images. It's almost like when you're looking at Hamzanama, you will see that people are like slashed from the middle, and then the bodies are open and the blood is sprouting out, and you almost feel like that what Emma Thurman was doing in her movie Kill Bill, that's what was happening, centuries ago in a small little corner of a miniature painting. And that really fascinated me, that how they were making images and the intensity of violence that they were showing. And that's what I'm trying to do, to create my own narrative by pulling out images from the Mughal miniatures. And the screen is such. Oh, again, repousse work. I don't know how clear the images are.
So this iconography is what really needs to be looked at in great detail. I think, because, she has actually, in a way, revived the Ripuse work, but used it for her creative purpose.
How do I? So the battle scene, these are the works that are going to Dubai, so you're getting a sneak preview. The show is starting next week, and we are left with some, images which are not professionally taken, but they are here. So again, as I said, the imagery to create an image of violence, and you create and you layer it with beauty, that you are stuck by the beauty, and when you go close to it, so you see what's happening in the image. So there is a back and forth that happens with the viewer, with the work, that they go close to it in order to see what's happening, and with the sheer colors and beauty, and then they repel back with the image that they encounter with.
This is a fascinating fountain of blood, coming
fountain
from
back
the
again.
head.
Again, I think this is the last image, if I'm not wrong. Yes.
Adeela, can you talk a little bit about the found surfaces, the plates that you actually have done quite a lot of the enameled work on? Here, of course, it's a different kind of surface.
So my quest in the city has been on the foot. So I used to park my car, and I used to take a rickshaw and walk around in the midst of Karachi, find the right karigar, the best karigar that is available in the city. And the same goes with the objects that sometimes I look at the object and I know exactly what I want to do, and sometimes I have an idea and I look for the object. That's an interesting process, because I look at things in a very different way. The images are not here, but I've worked with the swords, I've worked with the cleavers, and the cleavers, they were making the cleavers in Eidgah, and I saw that they're exactly the same size as the postcards that we sell to the world, that please come to Pakistan, it's a beautiful country. So I had those, postcards painted on those cleavers. So they became my postcards for Pakistan. And the plates that you see have been collected over years from the Sunday market and the second-hand bazaar. That Sunday market का रिवाज अब ख़त्म हो गया है पाकिस्तान में, कराची में बहुत कम हो गया, but एक डिफेंस में एक संडे बाज़ार लगता था जहाँ पे कंटेनर्स आते थे from UK, जो second-hand चीज़ें होती थी. And that really, I started collecting them, and then the relationship that was built was that you live every day, we are living with a harsh reality, and we eat, we breathe, and we sleep. And we are still living with knowing what is happening around us. And to present something grotesque on the plate, will you be able to live, or will you be able to eat in those places? That's the kind of connection that I built with when I started using. And I also feel that the pleasure involved when you eat, it's a pleasurable act. I think that the same goes for violence, that people who are inflicting violence, they inflict it again and again, and the intensity of violence is increasing, that you kill someone, but you make sure that you cut them into pieces, उनका एक-एक आज़ा आप अलग करें. तो you ask yourself कि what was happening in their mind, that they knew that the body is already dead, that how can they inflict such a pain on a dead body? And that's the kind of emotion, or that's the kind of feeling that I'm working with when I'm making the work.
Well, thank you so much, but I think that we should open up for questions, because we just have another 5 minutes.
वो फैज़ ने कहा था कि लाओ तो कत्लनामा मेरा मैं भी देख लूँ किस किस की मोहर है सर महज़र लगी हुई. Umar at this end of the spectrum and Faisal at that end of the spectrum of Thana and Kacheri. So the third missing link is the legislature. And you both are practitioners, seems to be helpless about what happened. And Karachi, rather than being devolved over the last 35, 40 years. I am a Karachiite myself. मेरा सवाल ये है कि किस किस की मोहर है सर महजर लगी हुई?
I'm not religious, and I'm not resilient. I resist. So, I don't believe in resilience. I believe in resistance. देखिए ये बड़ी लंबी बहस है, लेकिन बात ये है कि सबकी लगी भी है, लेकिन बात ये है आपका हिसाब आपसे लिया जाए, आप अपना हिसाब दें, जो कोई और कर रहा है that is his problem, आपको अपना हिसाब देना ज़रूरी. That is what I think about, that is what Adeela thinks about. One of the things which will come out, I hope you see the book, is one of the amazing things I discovered in this case. Of course, I did this Brown War case. So one of the amazing things I discovered is that the greatest resistance in this case actually came from artists. It's incredible. It's incredible. And this is what I saw when I did the Baldia factory. There was no resistance. Of course, there was resistance in terms of mobilization. But when you talk about civil society, there were political mobilization, of course, by the Pakhtun Tehreek, but civil society, it was the artist. And this is one of the mysteries which I have yet to discover, that when I did the Baldia factory fire case, where the highest numbers of workers ever killed in human history were killed in Karachi, 258. We are trying to, come up with Guinness Book of World Records of massacres. There was not a single union strike in Karachi in 2012. But the biggest public art exhibition ever held in Karachi was held within 6 months. And the artists were paid no money. They volunteered. Over 175 art pieces were displayed. It's a mystery that these artists and these, these social causes, why this connection? I mean, this has to be somehow discovered. So resist.
Yeah, it's an interesting question that obviously jitni bhi all processes of industrialization and globalization have affected other places as well. But Karachi's sort of strange chemistry has been such that the violence level for a protracted period of time, there's been violence in other places, there's been violence in Mexico City or Rio de Janeiro or wherever. But this period of sort of 45 years, where we've seen different iterations of violence, there was ethnic, sectarian, police, extrajudicial killings, terrorism, all of these things. We've been unique in that, and I wish I had a better answer or some sort of empirical formula ke why this is so. But it just seems that Karachi, once that ek dafa wo chingari lag gayi, it's just sort of found different ways to burn as the years have gone by.
Nani, I'm sorry, we have to move on. Anyone else? George, do you want to say something?
No, I think, I don't want to say that, but I think the violence in Karachi, which I'm coming for a few years, it gives a benefit of some people and local bodies. In the end of the day, I'm a foreigner, I cannot go more than that. Adeela, can you tell us before we close a bit about the Blood River there, on that last work?
So again, I'm going to my stories. My grandmother used to say that जब कोई नाहक मौत होती है तो आसमान लाल हो जाता है, जिसका रिफ्लेक्शन पानी पे पड़ता है तो पानी लाल हो जाता है. और वो हमेशा ये बात कहती थी, जब भी आसमान तो उनको गुलाबी नज़र आता था तो वो हमेशा as a child I have heard it like I don't know how many times. So the blood river has always been there, but we have seen recent examples also where we have actually seen how water turned red because there were so many killings. So that's why the blood is there, and there's a lot happening here in this tapestry, which is 12 feet high. Again, this is going to Dubai, but there's, Greek mythology, and then there are stories that are coming out from Hamza Nama, that Deo is bringing the chest of armor to the world, and Orpheus is descending down to look for his beloved and to rescue the beloved from the underworld. And then these men on the side panels, which you can't see, but these men are coming down from the heavens to loot the world. But there's already chaos in the world, and the water is already red. So what do you do then when there is everything has already been looted? So what do you do then? So that's the question.
Well, we live for another day and for better times, and we believe in those. Thank you, everybody.